Three, two. Good afternoon, Panther fans, and welcome to another special edition of the Four-Man Rush. I'm your main man, Kevin Avery, a.k.a. 4MR_Country Kev. We're bringing back a long-time good friend of the show with us, former Carolina Panther All Pro and Pro Bowl guard Mike Wahle. Reached out to him, definitely wanted him to, provide us his info and insight, particularly about the Panthers with this post-free agency, post-draft time frame that we're now in. So pretty much it's going to be all about the trenches on this show, talking about the Carolina Panthers offensive line and defensive line. So definitely glad he made time out of his busy schedule to join us here. Mike, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kev, man. Always a pleasure being on the show, talking ball with you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So as those who've been following along, you do your thing with Process to Perform, but for those who maybe watch for the first time, how about share with us what Process to Perform is all about, and also giving fans about what else you got going on and other avenues that you're into.
Sure. So I work with players. I'm a player development guy. I was a skill development specialist in the NFL when I got out of the league after done playing. Came back in. Was the first NFL's first skill development specialist. I kind of parlayed that into working with professional athletes, and then kind of started moving down the chain as far as aspiring athletes. So anywhere from really 12 and up, if you're trying to become elite and trying to understand the behaviors that drive you to find your best and find your ceiling, that's what Process to Perform is all about. You can check that out at processtoperform.com. And then I do a bunch of different media. One of the things that we are really into now is just obviously some Packers stuff. I was a Green Bay Packer for 7 years. So we do the On My Block podcast with Amon Green on our YouTube channel, Process to Perform. You can also check out Block Party, where I do a ton of work on the trenches. We did a bunch of previews and things for the draft. We'll do that every week, especially during the NFL season. We deal really with all the trench stuff, linebackers, running backs, tight ends, offensive, defensive line, all the battles that go on there, the techniques that win, the mindsets that win, the behaviors that win, how schemes play into the different personnel groups we have. So that's a lot of fun. And just besides that, just raising kids, enjoying life, Kev.
All right, great. Well, yeah, you definitely have a full plate there. So, again, we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to chop it up with us. All right. So, Mike, as you probably well know, a couple of weeks ago, the NFL just completed the 2023 NFL draft. Even though free agency is still going on, most of the heavy lifting in free agency has already been done. Teams are now filling in, their roster for the, up to 90 men that they can take to training camp this upcoming July here. Mm-hmm. With the Carolina Panthers, of course, we're up under a new regime. We're up under the Frank Reich regime now. Coach Wright retained your good pal and buddy, former O-line coach for you, James Campen, which was huge. I mean, you couldn't find out one Panther fan that did not want James to stay. So we're glad that he did. So definitely on the offensive line side, and on the defensive side, Panthers are switching from a 4-3 up under Phil Snow to now a 3-4 up under Ejiro Evero, who was the defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos. But with a little research, I found out that he was an assistant up under Dom Capers back in 2016 in Green Bay. Mm-hmm. So definitely bringing over that 3-4 philosophy, which I've always kind of preferred myself. So we're going to definitely talk about how the players that's currently on the roster and that were just recently added through free agency in the draft on both sides of the trenches can help the Panthers improve. And because we all know, the trenches dictate pretty much the flow of the game and pretty much the outcome as well.
Yeah, especially when you run that 3-4 defense. Yeah, it's on the defensive line. Those guys are unheralded stars in the National Football League. Those guys don't get a lot of, especially I'm talking about the D tackles in the 3-4 scheme. A lot of times those guys don't have stats and don't get sacks. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have good players at those positions to keep your linebackers clean, to be able to play that gap and a half technique, you're really going to have a hard time being an effective defense. And so hopefully they have the right mixture of guys that are already in this scheme, and then maybe they brought in a handful. It looks like they brought in a handful of guys with Deshaun Williams and Shai Tuttle in particular that might be able to add to what they got going on here in Carolina.
Yeah, well, since you started on the defensive side, let's begin there. So, with the 3-4, and a lot of our fans may not know. I know you definitely know, and guys like me and Smooth. By the way, he was supposed to have joined us, but he had a family emergency. Had to catch a quick flight from Atlanta to New Jersey. There was an untimely death in the family, so our condolences to Smooth of the 4-man rush. He's currently he left Atlanta. He hit me up about 1:40 and told me apologize to you for not being able to make it. So just want to give you the heads up.
Safe travels. That's too bad to hear.
Yeah, definitely. But so back to this 3-4 here. Point I was trying to make was there's different types of 3-4s. There's the traditional 2-gap 3-4 defense, and then there's the 1-gap. And it's been said that under Evero, we're going to run the 1-gap style of 3-4. Now, for our fans, Mike, do you mind explaining the difference? Since we were just talking about the job of the D-line, what's the difference between a 1-gap 3-4 philosophy and scheme versus a 2-gap?
Sure. So just very at the most basic level, just think of a 1-gap as somebody who you have one responsibility. So if I'm lined up at 3 technique, I own the B gap. I have to shoot the B gap. I can penetrate a little bit more. And we're playing a little bit more of a penetrating defense. When you think about 1-gappers, you think about more of a penetrating defense. When you think about 2-gappers, you're basically lining up kind of on the body of the guard or the tackle, and you're responsible for kind of the gap on either side. And what you're trying to do is eat up a lot of space, keep guys from getting to the second-level linebackers. What the Packers do, and what I suspect the Panthers will be doing predominantly, is running what we call a gap and a half, Kev. So a gap and a half is basically like you start by running a 2-gap look, and you're trying to push the offensive lineman into 1-gap, and you can always fall back into your half gap, right? So you're trying to take that lineman and push him down and have him clog a part of a hole, and then you can always fall back into the backside. So instead of that true 2-gap look where you're just pressing, locking out, trying to read both sides, trying to take up space, you're trying to push that offensive lineman into a hole without him being able to rise to the second level, but you're always willing to fall back. That's something that a guy like Kenny Clark, you start thinking about, really good 3-4 D tackles. Kenny Clark for the Green Bay Packers, that's something he does as well as anybody in the National Football League.
Yeah, Kenny Clark. Yeah, he's definitely someone I definitely enjoy watching. As you know, Mike, my daughter Jelani, who's in California, she's a big Packers fan. I'm hoping she'll hop on because I think she had a couple of questions she want to ask you about the squad. But yeah, Kenny Clark, he definitely fits that mold. And for the Carolina Panthers, you mentioned up the free agents that we brought in with Shai Tuttle and also Williams here, Deshaun Williams, who's actually from the area. Deshaun Williams, he runs about 6'1", 295. With Shai Tuttle, he's going about 6'3", 300. And it's suspected that and the other line pieces are obviously going to be Derek Brown, 6'5", running about 320. So between those 3 players, do you think they're interchangeable as far as nose and the zero technique for the nose and the other whether you want to call them DN or DTs, just depends on your preference. Are they? You think these guys are interchangeable, or do you see that one is going to be a better fit in one particular gap than the other?
Yeah, when you look at Tuttle coming from New Orleans, he's probably more comfortable playing over the center. So my guess is he's going to be the guy that's going to play predominantly at nose tackle. Not a big guy at 300 pounds. Quite frankly, I mean your defensive interiors, everything starts and stops with Derek Brown. Derek Brown is on the cusp of being an elite level defensive tackle. He does so many things well. I love the leverage. I love the play speed. I feel like he can beat multiple offensive players on the same snap. So he's got a lot of kind of traits of an elite level guy. And now it'll be interesting to see being able to play that 4-eye technique, maybe shift down and play the 3 technique when you go to an over and under front with that 3-4 defense, because you do have, an elite guy in Brian Brown on the edge. It'd be interesting to see how this helps him kind of improve his game because it's given him different opportunities from different positions on the field. When I look at Deshaun Williams, active hands guy, he plays with a little wiggle in pro. He's not a great pass rusher by any means, but he's a guy that he does a good job of kind of locking out, and Tuttle does the same thing. Both these guys are kind of lockout players, and they play hard through the whistle. They're really good at reading and reacting. They're really good at chasing down plays. Neither of them are what you would consider pass rush guys, but most of the guys you hire in a 3-4, when you're talking about the nose tackle, you're talking about defensive tackles, they're not really traditionally, it's like you think of like Ty Warren back for the Patriots back in the day. Right. They're not traditionally these great pass rushers. Or you're going to get that pass rush from your scheme. You're going to get pass rush from your edge, your outside linebacker play. And then I think you're going to get some within this defense with Derek Brown still as well. But these guys are kind of space eaters. They got to do a lot of dirty work. It is a unforgiving job, but I think they're certainly up for the task, and they both have proven in their schemes on prior teams that they can play at this level.
Yeah, when you talk about old school D tackles, one of my favorite to watch, not only in college, University of Miami, but for New England Panthers was Vince Wilfork.
Yeah.
You talking about a guy that for his size that could move. Did you ever have any battles against him?
Oh, yeah. It was the first play of 2005 or 2000 must have been 2005 season. We played the Patriots. They came to Carolina. Watched the first snap. Mm-hmm. I launched him about 3 yards off the ball. Okay. No, listen, great player. But here's the truth about really, really big guys playing defensive line. Mm-hmm. When you're an offensive lineman, a guy like that, he's not a day off because the guy's a stud, right?
Right.
But he doesn't impose a threat from a pass rush perspective, right? Mm-hmm. I used to have to play against Tractor Trailer, Ted Washington, those guys in Chicago. They are difficult to run the ball against, but they're big. They're not penetrating guys, so they're just big bodies. Mm-hmm. And then they don't really rush the passer. So from an offensive line standpoint, I know this is not how the scheme guys think about it, but I'm just talking about we're always worried about how do you win your matchup.
Right.
They really don't strike fear into guys like me because they can't get around me. They don't really want to go through me, and all they're really trying to do is hold that ground and eat that space up.
Right.
So when I think about guys that make me nervous, I think much more about guys like Derek Brown who are willing to pass rush and penetrate than like 350, 360-pound guys, even though I think they're super impressive as athletes, and it's not like they're easy to play against. It's just it's a different kind of sensation when you go into a game like worrying about the run and the pass game. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. It's funny you mentioned that because you was reading my mind because another guy on the Panthers roster that I thought would be a good fit at the zero technique was Marquand McCall. He's 6'3", about 345. Mm-hmm. Second year out of Kentucky, and a holdover from the previous regime, Bravion Roy. He played a lot of zero technique at Baylor, 6'1", 330. Here as well. He's coming up on his fourth year, contract year. So
same kind of guy when you watch him, right? He's a big body, not a pass rush threat. I'm talking about Bravion Roy. And that doesn't make him, again, what fans are going to have to understand this year is like, if you're looking at the D tackle to be a stat stuffer, you're going to be disappointed.
Truly.
Yeah. You'll know they're doing their job if your rushing yards per carry and yards per game is low. Then they're doing their job. If they're not doing their job, that's how you know. It has nothing really to do with their stats. If they fall off on a couple tackles, great. But generally speaking, even in the gap and a half scheme, they'll have more than the two gap. But they're not going to get, the numbers just are never going to be great.
Right, like a former teammate of yours in Green Bay. Oh, man, when I saw him on TV, the guy was huge. Gilbert Brown.
Big Gilb, yep.
Oh, man. Yeah, he was just like –
Now, he was a true nose tackle, though. That was a 4-3, old school. That's just how – back in the day, you remember, they just started finding big dudes, and they put him at that shade technique on the center, and they were just like, I bet you can't move this guy because, the pendulum's always swinging, right? You get big offensive linemen, Aaron Donald becomes the best defensive tackle in the league. You get smaller offensive linemen, Albert Haynesworth became the best D tackle in the league. That's how it works. And so for that moment in time, Gilbert, nobody could block Gilbert. And I think that was right. He kind of became in vogue after, obviously, the fridge had just been in there in the 80s. And then he was kind of the next wave of just monster dudes who could get a little push in the pass game, had a great personality, tough player. But, really, when you look at back in the day, he was really a first and second down guy. He was never on the field in third down. He's not, in other words, he's not an every down player that you're looking at.
Right. And one of the things behind the scenes that me and Smooth were discussing as far as trying to put out is a way of, judging the play in the trenches better, because like I said, the trenches is not a stat stuffer type of thing. We were looking at, watching, film, see how often, a lineman, on the defensive line side, how they maintain against double teams. Are they to hold a position, or do they get pushed back? Do they get penetration, or, are they disrupting the blocking scheme? Did they knock a pulling guard out the way? Things like that, and try to, we're going to try to feature that as more of a way of, explaining line play. But there's a stat that I kind of fell in love with through NFL Next Gen. I was wondering if you could explain it a little bit more in detail, that we try to use again to show effectiveness of defensive linemen. It's the run stop win rate. Do you mind explaining that to me and the fans here?
Yeah, listen, I'll start by preface by saying this. I don't buy anything that Amazon Next Gen Stats sells at all.
Okay.
I just listen, just because, as you know, you like watching film, right? If you watch film and some guy from Amazon watches film and you guys come up with a different conclusion, who am I to believe? But you see what I mean? But with the win rate, what they're essentially saying is they have some metric for success. So when Amazon builds out a pass rush win rate or a run block win rate, they're saying, did the defensive player get A, penetration, or B, pushback to this point in range in this amount of time? Or did they release from their blocker in this amount of time? So what happens a lot is, let's say, for example, that Derek Brown gets double teamed. Okay. Let's not use Derek Brown. Let's use a backup. Let's say Kobe Jones goes, or Raekwon Williams goes in, gets double teamed, falls over. Okay. Is laying on his back, and the running back falls on top of him within a yard of the line of scrimmage. He's going to get a plus for Amazon. You see what I mean? So it becomes a bit of a problem. But basically what they're saying is this player getting pushed back or getting into the line of scrimmage? Is it a yard? Is it a yard and a half? They have a standardized metric for success. Or is he able to, in the pass rush situation, is he able to release from his blocker within a second and a half, 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, whatever it is, right? So it all depends on proximity from the quarterback. There's a bunch of different ways they try to look at it to make it as definitive as possible. But those stats are always difficult for me, Kevin, because they come without context. They don't know the context of the play. They don't know the decision the running back made, for example. They don't know the decision the quarterback made, where he's supposed to line up, et cetera. So I think it's really difficult.
You know what? That's gave me an idea. I mean, maybe off camera, maybe we can sit down and put something together and have it ready for the fall, some sort of grading metric, and then, try to, promote it and push it, get it out there, obviously with your name being way bigger than mine,
So I used to do this when I was working for teams. I created a process-based kind of standardized way to look at tape. And so for like defensive tackles, for example, what do you want to look at to see if they're successful? I mean, I don't mind giving information away, because if you can do it, then go do it. Right. So you look at, first of all, are they in a stance that's like, are they in a stance that's going to put them in a position to be successful? How is their first step? Is their first step within a range? Like, is it landing where their down hand is? Where's their toe pointed? How's their hip height and their pad level into contact? Are their hands inside or outside? Like, these kind of the things that, and again, are they playing a one gap? Are they playing a gap and a half? Are they playing a two gap? You have to understand all of that. But now you can look at stuff and say, okay, this is what they're being required to do. Like, I'm playing a gap and a half guy. Is my man able to two-hand press, hands on the chest of the guard, and crush him into the A gap and play the B gap? If he does that, whether he makes the play or not, he wins. If he doesn't do that, he loses. It's pretty, it becomes very, very binary, right? It becomes a little bit easier because you're looking at how they're doing things as opposed to the outcome of the game.
Okay. All right. That definitely makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we could talk about it offline sometime, but for me, it's a much better way. It's a much better way to teach, and it's a much better way for these guys to progress.
Yeah, and I think like information like that needs to be, you know, made more known to the public, to, you know, the judge, because in general, fans are fans. You know, they first thing to run to, ooh, how many sacks he got. You know, like like they made a big deal. Derek Brown ain't good. He ain't had but one sack last year. Like, are you serious? Did you just say because he only had one sack he wasn't good last year? Like, it just be
well,
Panthers,
and that's the problem.
It's a fickle place.
Well, that's the problem with it. This is why I always kind of dog on Amazon Next Gen Stats, because what are they really created for? They're created for fan usage, right? So you can have these conversations, but they're not really progressing the argument because they're non-contextual. So it's like you and I can sit down with the same sheet of stats, and I can create an argument, you can create an argument, and we can both think that we're right, and we could be on completely opposite ends of the spectrum, right? And so again, if you're not willing to, it's fun to have casual conversations, but if you want to engage in like how are people playing, if you don't go to the tape, then stay off Twitter, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Okay. All right. So, as you know, Mike, because I know you keep up with certain statistics as well and metrics. I know that Evero mentioned this in his press conference. The base defense has only played about 20% of the snaps, give or take, here. So there's a lot of sub packages here. Now, let me ask you this: under a 3-4 philosophy, sub packages, are we looking at back to a traditional 4-man front? Yeah. I've seen some, like the 3-3-5. I've seen that used. I even seen a 2-4-5 particularly used as well. When it comes to sub packaging in the defensive line, like where do you see, or where do you feel like up under what the Panthers possibly could be looking at here?
Well, I mean, if you look at a 4-2 or a 2-4, they're pretty much the same thing, right? Depending on what you want to call Brian Burns or what you want to call Marquise Haynes, right? Are they linebackers? They turn into defensive ends. That's how most people kind of look at that. You're really just looking at how many defensive backs you're going to put in the game. That's your first question,
right?
And so with the NFC South, the guys who are going to play the most, you just start looking at how do I need to match up in order to effectively limit the running back to less than 4 yards a carry while being able to contend with the tight end and the slot receivers in the offense. That's really kind of that's generally how these guys are thinking about it. How few people can I put on in the box in order to stop the run under 4 yards a carry, under 4.5, whatever their threshold is. And so I would generally guess, even in a 3-4 defense, you're probably just going to go back to a 4-2 look or 2-4 look, however you want to say it, probably run nickel. And then you're going to have that guy, that safety, that could be able to come down if you want to start running more of a single safety high deal instead of a traditional shell look, what most guys are doing now. You look at like most people in the league for the last couple of years, it's more like bend but don't break. I'm going to give you the lines between the 20 and the 30. Or the 30 and the 30. And then once we get down there, I don't want you to be able to kick that field goal. So I'm going to try to shore up my defense a little bit more and try to stop that run. But most teams are saying, listen, the guard's going to get an offsides call or a holding call. Running back's going to slip in the hole. Like, we're going to throw 2 incomplete passes. Something bad's going to happen before you have to go. If I make you march 80 yards. And, for the most part, teams are having enough success with that to feel confident running it. I personally would rather see a 7-man box or at minimum a 6-man box most of the time, but we're seeing a ton of dime 5-man boxes, 4-1 looks with, bringing in a dime guy. And it just, I don't know about you, man, but it drives me insane.
Yeah, it definitely does. And one of the things about what the Panther play here that a lot of fans have had plenty of discussion about where his best fit is Jeremy Chin. And it was mentioned by both Evero and Capers that they see him playing more in the box but still be moved around. Now this is a term, and I again appreciate you if you can break it down for us. The big nickel, because for me, I look at it as there's a slot nickel and then there's big nickel. And when you look up the definition, that's pretty much like an extra safety that kind of comes down and plays like a linebacker role. I guess that's my generic version for it versus your traditional slot that's just pretty much there to do more covering than anything. So give me your opinion on the whole conversation about nickel, slot nickel, big nickel.
Yeah, so I would look. I just kind of look at it this way. If you say slot nickel, that was probably a kid who played cornerback in college.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if you say big nickel, that's a kid who probably played safety in college.
Okay.
So you're talking realistically in the NFL, you're probably talking somewhere between 10 to 20 pounds in weight difference between corners and safeties. And if you and Chin is a guy who you could close your eyes and say, oh, in college you could have played linebacker. Throw a couple of pounds on him, it's not that far away. So he's the kind of guy that is more the enforcer role, maybe, in that when you think about big nickel, he's going to be a guy that maybe you can match him up against some tight ends, but he's not there to play man-to-man coverage. He's there to drop down in the box. He's there to play a little bit of zone and be that guy who's hitting crossers, be that guy who's plugging holes in the run game. So I think when you look at this defense, bringing over Von Bell, you have Chin, J.C. Horn, you have Shaq Thompson, Frank Louvu coming from the Jets. I think you have the pieces in place to, again, even maybe improve on what they've been doing the last couple of years with the new scheme. It really is going to come down to, can you find the complementary piece to Brian Burns on the other side, creating that pass rush? And are you going to allow Derek Brown to flourish in what is a traditionally more difficult way for a one gap playing defensive tackle to flourish? So I think those will be the interesting pieces. I think the rest of these guys are kind of set to have big years, given the new defensive structure and given the talent they have on the board already.
Yeah, definitely it's going to be one of the training camp battles where a lot of our fans going to be looking forward to. All right, so we've been talking about the big boys a little bit. Let's kind of step out a little bit here to the, if you want to call it edge, DN, outside linebacker. Probably the biggest current conversation amongst Panther Twitter is who's going to be the guy opposite of Brian Burns to rush and get after the passer. One of the things I looked up last year, the Panthers, believe it or not, they were top 10 in quarterback pressures, but they were like bottom 5 or bottom 10 in like actual sacks. So it's kind of like we're kicking the door, but we're not getting the bad guy every time. So, and then with us we signed Hassan Reddick, which was painful to watch him go crazy in Philly this year. It's got a lot of Panther fans in the mood. So, with the drafting of DJ Johnson in the 3rd round out of Oregon, it's definitely got a lot of mixed reviews. Some fans like, hey, I can see the potential. He's athletic. He's this and that. Other fans were like, man, he was in college 6 years and ain't got but a total of 8 sacks and just that and the third. So, and I'm looking at guys also like Amari Barno, coming back in. Just last week, if you caught the interview, I did one with Marquise Haynes here as well. So personally, I think we actually had the guys on the roster to be able to generate that pass rush opposite of Brian Burns here. But I'm definitely not opposed to if they want to spend some money and bring someone in. I know one of the more popular requests has been like a Leonard Floyd here. But again, in a 3-4 base here, Mike, what do you think about the Panther options as far as that other outside linebacker spot?
Well, the thing about the 3-4 is they'll usually, if they're going to bring 4 guys, it's going to be either Burns or sometimes it's going to be the guy opposite him. So in the 3-4, one of the downsides can be that you don't rush maybe your best guys all the time. So you need to have a guy on the other side that can bring it and can threaten the edge. And so I think this is going to be more of a pass rush by committee on the other side of Brian Burns. You look at Marquise Haynes. He's a guy that can increase. He can still work to increase his play speed. He can engage better with his hands and start thinking about like how to improve his launch angle into the offensive tackle so that he can use his athleticism a little bit better. A lot of guys are just continuing to run upfield and then like kind of run right down the middle of these guys, try to engage and then separate late. We need to be using leverage and angles off the snap in order to create better situations when we go into contact. I see some of these DJ Johnson, the rookie, like you said, even if he was not a 6-year player, usually when you bring in a rookie, it just takes a little while to get up to the play speed and the talent that you're going to be playing against week in and week out. And I know the Pac-12's got some good talent, but this is a whole different thing. So Again, I wouldn't expect that you're going to see this breakout double-digit sack season from a guy like that. The good thing about the 3-4 is guys like Shaq Thompson are going to guys like Frank Lavu, they're going to get free rushes. Like you can create a lot of action because you have to deal with like the count just changes a little bit for the offensive line and the quarterback. So especially, and then even talk about the running back as far as where their eyes have to go. So you're going to bring different kinds of pressure because your edge guys, your outside linebackers are going to be expected to be part of the passing game as well as the rush. And that's going to open up your safeties. It's going to open up your your inside linebackers to get a couple more free moves. You're going to run some games inside to free up those D tackles. But it is something you got to have to consider when you go to that 3-4 defense. Having that D tackle and Derek Brown that can rush is a huge deal because he's going to get a lot of single blocks. But the other side of that is if you don't have an edge player or multiple edge players that can really threaten, it's tough to figure out where you're going to generate that pass rush unless you got these two guys, like these two new guys. Are they good enough to bull rush guards, centers, and create that pocket pressure to flush your quarterback? I don't know if those are the guys that are just going to naturally do that, but generally speaking, that's what you have to look for.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I just think that it was just too many times as a fan last year watching the games. It's like, we was right there, particularly on like 3rd and 8. Good coverage, creating pressure, and somehow the quarterback just steps up right before we get to him and throws that little slant or something, and next thing you know, first down. That used to be so frustrating to watch. So, definitely hoping that one of those guys can materialize to close the deal up. I even saw where fourth-year player Utir Gross-Matos has been given a chance. He's been labeled as an outside linebacker now. Me personally, I thought his better fit was a 4-3 DN, but hey, if that's what they want to do. Because one thing I did like about what Coach Wright said, it says everybody here has a fresh start. So I definitely like to hope that in year 4, Gross-Matos, who's one of my favorite players coming out, can finally find a home, find a niche where he's able to be productive and consistent here. But overall, man, I'm just waiting to see how these position battles on the defense line going to play out for the Carolina Panthers. And I'm personally confident in the moves made and the roster that's on the talent that's on the roster.
Yeah, no doubt. And the big thing is, like Coach Reich said, is it's a new room, it's a new scheme, a couple of new guys on the coaching staff, and you never know when a guy's just like the light's going to turn on or what the impetus for that for sparking that flame. You just never know what it's going to be. Is it a new coach? Is it a new system? Is it just the way they're hearing something? Is they're putting their hand out of the ground instead of being in a 3-point all the time? Like all this stuff, you just never know what's going to happen. So it's as long as they're working hard and they got their behaviors right, these guys have a chance to do something really special because you just look at the roster right now on defense. There's a lot of good players on the team.
Yep. All right, so we're going to go to the other side of the trenches now here, Mike. We talked about the D-line because, like I said, definitely you asked a lot of questions and curiosities about how the linemen play on the 3-4. So let's go back to this more established offensive line that the Panthers brought in. As I mentioned at the very beginning, the Panthers retained Panthers offensive line James Campen under Frank Wright, who said it was crucial. And I didn't know if you got a chance to see it because it kind of went viral amongst Panthers Twitter, Mike. The reaction of James Campen when we drafted in the 4th round Chandler Zavala. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you had a chance to see that, but
he was a happy man.
Very happy. I mean, clapping, just excitement. It's like that's what you want to see out of your O-line coach. So definitely glad that we drafted him because he was someone that I did a lot of mocks with that I felt would be a good fit here. But overall, as a unit, the Panthers do have some concerns on offensive line. Here, the concerns are both guards in Week 18 at New Orleans suffered some pretty significant injuries. Right guard Austin Corbett tore his ACL, and left guard Brady Christensen fractured his ankle. Mm-hmm. And in the pre-draft press conference, Frank Wright mentioned that Corbett is going to probably miss some games heading into the season. Yeah. Here, so it's going to be a competition for that right guard spot. course, one of my favorite free agent signings, of course, we brought back Bradley Bozeman on a 3-year deal. I thought that was huge for us. Definitely once he got plugged into the starting line last year, things just got a lot better, particularly in the run game for us. Iquanu, we've got a year season under his belt, so I think he's definitely going to come back better. And then, of course, the OG of the offensive line, Taylor Moton.
Great player.
Hasn't not missed a snap since 2017. I mean, the best ability is availability, and I definitely think that he was, he's the unquestioned leader of this O-line. And then, as I mentioned, we addressed in free agency, we brought in some guys. Pull up his name here real quick. Justin McCrary, who worked with Campen, both in Houston and I believe at Green Bay, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I know Justin.
We brought him in as well. Still on the roster, Deontay Brown, 6th-round pick from 2021. Very popular amongst Panther fans was Cade Mays out of Tennessee in his second year out of Tennessee. Definitely he got some time playing fullback, which was fun to watch. I think we had talked about that a little bit in an earlier interview we did, how fun that is to get the big guys in the backfield. Looking at this Panthers offensive line, we're going to start with the interior first. Bozeman looks to be pretty set. How do you feel about the not only the additions of Justin McCray and Chandler Zavala, but also the play of guys like Brady Christensen coming back? How do you see the Panthers interior looking?
Well, everything's up in flux, obviously, because of Corbett and Christensen and what their health's going to be like. Austin Corbett's a good pro in this league. He's only going to get continue to get better, I think, as the years go on. I like his style of play. He does things a little bit differently, I think, than maybe some other guards are being taught, but he's effective in his footwork and the way he tries to attack the game. Brady Christensen to me is still trying to figure it out. He still needs to improve his play strength. He's a good athlete. He's got relatively good feet. Can continue to improve his hands and leverage. His hip power into contact, I think, is something that he can really work on. But I just like the way that he tries to finish through plays. I think that counts for more than we usually give credit for. But with that being said, you bring in a guy like Zavala out of NC State, and he was a pretty high rated guard in this draft. I had a couple guys rated above him, but he's a pretty decent athlete. He's a big guy. He shows some good kind of weight room strength. I think he can improve his play strength and explosive into contact. But what I really liked about him when you watch him on film, I was actually watching the linebacker for Clemson, and then I started watching like, oh man, this guard is just eating him up. What was the linebacker's name for Clemson?
The one that got drafted?
The one that got drafted, yeah.
Trenton Simpson.
Yeah, I was watching Simpson, and I'm like, man, this guard is just eating this kid alive in the center as well. And so he kind of stood out from that reason. But I really like that you could tell that Chandler Zavala is a kind of a detailed guy. Like his stance is correct. His footwork, he's trying to do things in a consistent manner. He's very good. If he picks one foot up, he's going to put the other one back in place. Like he does. It's very easy to teach those guys because they already kind of have the base level foundational requirements of technique. So when Campen goes to work and tries to improve this player, it's not like you're starting with this like, bowl of unmolded clay. Like this guy's got some pretty good foundational techniques already. So now it's just a question of, can you improve some leverage angles and body position things so you can go into contact with a little more potential power for explosion? And then I think you're going to be over time a good player depending on what his mentality is. So he's a guy that could probably, I'll just tell you this right now. There's guys that are worse than him starting in the league right now. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you just look at it from that standpoint. Like he can play right away. At what level, I'm not sure. But if you need a guy at Austin Corbett to come in, my initial thing was, well, if they're both healthy, I would just put him at left guard and let him fight out with Brady Christensen for left guard. Because I think long term he's probably going to be maybe has a higher ceiling, But listen, Icky and Charles Cross, both those guys last year, I thought were just special rookies. Taylor Moton is I became a huge fan last year, really, of Taylor, just watching film of him and seeing what a pro he is and how he treats every single snap. And he's one of those guys that, and this is not a big deal to some people, but he doesn't give away plays. So he gives you very consistent looks. He's very consistent with his body position and hands. He's patient. He does a lot of things right. Bringing in Hayden Hurst at the tight end position, I think, is going to help this team a lot as far as what they're able to do on offense, both in the run and the pass game. Bozeman, continuity is important. But when you say, where can we make the biggest leap here? I don't know that you make a leap with the offensive line play this year with those two guards coming back from injury, except for individually, you would expect that Icky's going to have a jump from year 1 to year 2. And you expect Bozeman's going to continue to prove under the tutelage of Campen.
Yeah, because I think that if there was an area of improvement, for Bozeman would be in pass pro. Based on the film watching, that we did, and of course with Icky, he had his baptism by fire. I mean, first game lined up against Myles Garrett, and
that's never a good sign.
And outside of 2 back-to-back bad plays, he pretty much held his own against Garrett. But those 2 plays he made were game changers. Both were sacks. So it was just it was rough. And then I think he had a streak of like 8-9 games where he didn't give up a sack after week 2. So I just definitely think that Ike Ekwonu is definitely trending in the right direction here. I like the fact, and I didn't know if you had a chance to go back and look that North Carolina State 2021 film when both of them were side by side. Man, like they were just like some road-graded monsters. Like I think Zavala said at his press conference, him and Icky were tied for bottles of pancake syrup that their offensive line coach gave out. And then when he had his back injury, Icky kind of took over from there. So, hey, man, like I say, may the best man win. Mm-hmm. I'm all for let the best player win, but I'm definitely excited about the future potential because they already got a chemistry, and an understanding of each other and, techniques and tendencies. And of course, you let Campen get his hands on them. I mean, I just think that left side could really form up to be something special, not only this year, but in the years to come.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Icky's a special talent. We talked about last year. He needs to improve his relationship with the ground, as far as the way that the way that his literal relationship with the floor. Sometimes it looks like he's on ice skates, but he's an incredible athlete, moves really well, has great bend. He's aggressive, has the mentality that you want. That they played together and they've had success before. I mean, that only builds into the narrative that they could play well in the National Football League together. And I agree with everything you said.
Right. So, not knowing the timetable of how long Austin Corbett could be out, like I said, first person that came to my mind to take his place was Cade Mays here, because I think at Tennessee, I think he at one point or another played all 5 positions while he was there. He did get some spot duty whenever Corbett went out last year, and I think Michael Jordan filled in for Brady Christian when he got hurt in that last game against the Saints. But Cade Mays, what is it that you see that you like about him, and what's the area that you think he proved that could allow him to get some reps starting at possibly a right guard while Corbett is on the mend?
Honestly, I think it would be tough for him to start over Chandler Zavala. I mean, I don't see if it's me and Christensen can play, then I just tell Zavala to go play right guard. Cade Mays, listen, it all comes down to when you transition from college to the National Football League. Mm-hmm. The transition is, first of all, the playbook increases. It feels like parabolically, right? I mean, the playbook, there's so many different calls and there's 27 different words that start with W and 27 different words that start with T. You know what I mean? It's just, you're like, oh my God, there's so many plays and there's so many responsibilities you have to have. And you don't know how to put them together in your mind. So it just goes like, oh, like, W means we're going to the right or, whatever it is. And it's automatic. We just don't, it's hard. And so that's the first part they have to deal with. And then the next part is, and a guy like Cade Mays is, you are going to consistently, 6th-round draft pick, you're going to consistently meet guys that are better athletes than you that have more experience. And what are you going to do about it? Right? So are you going to able to, from last year to this year, can you increase your speed of thought so you can increase your speed of play? And then can you put yourself in better body positions? Because the whole game is pre-confrontation in the offensive line. It's body position and footwork. Can you become automatic with your footwork? Can you become a hip hinge athlete every single snap so that you can enter into confrontation under control in a better position than your opponent? And it's very, very difficult to do, but conceptually it's very simple. So for a guy like Cade Mays, what he really has to do is become a master of his footwork, his first and second initial step, and his body position. Staying with your chest down, no numbers mentality, hip hinge athlete, so you can go into confrontation under control. If you spend all offseason doing that, you can play in the National Football League. If you don't do it, they're going to find somebody who can.
You brought up a good point there, because I guess I didn't really think about it, because primarily, and this is something we didn't discuss numerous times before, with Chandler Zavala, he primarily only played left guard. So I was kind of under the impression maybe that he might just be a left-sided player. So I never really thought about him at right guard as a possibility here, because we've seen some players can make the switch with no problem, and some players, struggle on one side. But that definitely be something worth taking a look at, like you said, especially if a Brady Christian comes back from his fractured ankle. With that. Now typically, I don't know if you ever had that type of injury, but for the fans, how is it coming back from? Because it seems like when linemen, particularly offensive linemen, have lower leg extremities, it kind of takes something out of their game a little bit. Do you think these type of injuries could be, or something that they can get back to how they were before, or would they have to adjust to a new way with the ACL on Corbett and with the fractured ankle of Christensen?
ACLs used to be the kiss of death in football back in 20, 30 years ago, but now it's a big deal, but it's kind of a run of the mill injury now, where they have a protocol in place and guys come back just as successful and able to move and strong and powerful as they ever were. The bigger thing with those is usually what other damage is done with the ACL. Like, did you lose cartilage? Did you tear something else in there that is irrecoverable? But just an ACL tear, a straight ACL tear, like, I think he comes back 100%. The ankle, it just depends. There's I forgot how many bones there are in the ankle. It's some ridiculous. That's like 30 or so. It's some ridiculous number. So it really depends on how bad it is. And that'll determine what kind of range of motion. Because remember, when we talk about relationship with the floor, you're really, the first thing that is affected is your ankle, right? Like, if you have good ankle mobility, then all of a sudden you can bend differently. You can engage the ground a little bit differently. You can put more cleats into the ground while maintaining the good, foot position forward instead of putting yourself out to the side. So if that affects him, that is something that could potentially be a real negative, but we just don't know. We don't know until we see him on the field. But even as he comes out of surgery, they probably don't have a great idea what that's going to look like until a couple of weeks down the road.
Okay, well, we definitely hope and wish that both players get a full, complete, speedy recovery and able to get back on the field till then. But it's going to be good. Going to be good camp battles to see who wins it out and who can help get us off to that to a good start. I know the schedule release is tentative for is it going to be tomorrow
Thursday
or Friday? Thursday.
Yeah,
Thursday. Thursday the 11th. I'm hearing it could be possibly delayed. We'll see, but they're trying to squeeze everything in. I know they had a meeting with Roger Goodell yesterday in New York with the people for the schedule, so definitely see how that plays out. Let's jump over here real quickly to the tackles here. I know we just talking about Icky, you talking about Taylor. I guess with me, because I always felt like when you play guard, and Mike, you play guards, technique and football IQ is one thing, but you also got to have that nasty. And you like playing guard, you just kind of have that nasty, violent type of mind frame. And that's one thing that, again, it's not to pick on the guy. I just don't see that side with the Brady Christian. So I was kind of thinking possibly he could be, if let's say Zavala wins out, and Corbett comes back healthy, he could be that swing tackle. That can play, left tackle, right tackle, if needed. But with the late signing last night, looks like we're bringing back a Panther favorite, Cam Irving, on a 1-year deal. Didn't see the contract on the numbers of that yet. But yeah, I definitely feel like that, knock on wood, we would like to keep as much consistency in starts and play at offensive line. But hey, injuries do happen. I guess in a pinch between Brady Christensen and Cam Irvin, how do you feel about their ability to play the swing tackle position?
Well, Cam's obviously had more experience, but I've never thought that he would. I didn't ever thought Cam was a starter quality player in the league, even out of Florida State. I feel the same way you do about Brady. You have two really, really good tackles. I mean, really good tackles. And the problem now is you're looking at it like, okay, Austin Corbett's probably not going to play. So Brady's probably going to have to be left guard because they're probably going to put the rookie over at right guard. I'm guessing here, right? But this is what I would do. And you kind of got all your spots. So now that's probably why they signed Cam Irving back. Because they're thinking, all right, there's not a guy on the roster that we're comfortable saying you can play swing tackle for us in a pinch. Now, if both those guards were healthy, I would say, and they drafted the way they did, I would bet they didn't bring Cam Irving back. I would bet they did exactly what you said and go, okay, we'll just put Brady out there in a pinch. And then if we see something in training camp that we just don't like, we could call these guys later. But it's like they're bringing him in right now because Austin Corbett can't play the first couple weeks of the season.
Right. Well, man, it's going to be a good one down there in Camp Warford, down there in good old Spartanburg, South Carolina. I know you don't miss the heat down there, Mike.
No, I hated that place. I absolutely hated them. I hated training camp there. Everything about it. We didn't get why we were there. I thought the Panthers, they were building a new facility, right? And then something fell through.
Yeah, long and the short, the city of Rock Hill tried to backdoor the agreed upon deal with Tepper, and he called their bluff, and he just shut the whole thing down. So,
hey, that guy, he's not a man to mess with. That's for sure.
Yeah, never mess with a man that's got brass testicles on his desk. All right. So overall, just give our fans some insights here. This time of the season, to players getting back into the weight room. I think we got rookie minicamp coming up this week, and then after that, hit the floor running with the OTAs, followed by the mandatory minicamp in June before the 6-week break before training camp. What is it that the linemen? Can you give us an insight on what it is that the both offense and defense line like? What are they learning and doing during this time, Mike? As far as the during the OTAs session that's coming up, explain to us what that's like.
Well, it depends. Talk about the young guys.
Young or just in general.
Well, I mean, it's different for everybody, right? Like if you're a veteran, for example, you have nothing you're probably not going to learn anything right now in OTAs. Like you can't show me the same playbook, if it's 5 years in a row and expect me to care. You'll probably glance through the playbook. What you're really as a veteran, if you have your process down, you understand what it takes for you to dramatically improve every offseason, because that's the game, right? The game is in the offseason. Can I get bigger, faster, stronger, healthier, get a better version of myself? Because, better human, better athlete, better football player. So I need to maximize that. And am I maximizing that with the Panthers? Like, do they have a good weight program for me? Do they have all the people that I need? Or do they have a good technique guy that I need? Or do I need to go find that somewhere else? If I'm a young guy and I don't know what's going on, what they take the rookies down, you could put the rookies in the building, I think, for like 8 or 9 hours a day, 4 days a week during this OTA session. So after they have their rookie minicamp, they're there and they're going through, they're meeting with a PR guy, and maybe they have a football school where they're learning how to watch film, and maybe they meet with their coach for a couple hours, and they have to go meet with the nutritionist for a couple hours. They have all these, they're just getting all this stuff thrown because they're a lot of the programs are trying to do a better job now of arming these guys with good information so they can kind of make better decisions when they leave the building. But ultimately, what all of these guys need to be doing is figuring out what their kind of routines and what their processes are like so that they can hit training camp going 100 miles an hour, feeling great about themselves and their opportunities this season. And whatever that is, it's going to be different for each guy. But, generally these guys, when they're younger, they're going to get a lot more receptive, obviously, for information from the team to come in. So the new strength conditioning coach, if you were at Iowa or you were at one of these big programs and then you go to the NFL, like the strength and conditioning training isn't going to be as dramatic as it used to be in college. It's just not. I mean, it's because you got veterans who are trying to conserve their energy. Right. So all of that stuff, you have to kind of figure out your own way, and you have to figure out where am I going to get my advantage? Like my advantage was, well, I'll work harder than anybody in the weight room, anybody on the field. I might not be as good, but I can fight and I can outlast you. Other guys are going to say, no, I feel like I need to get better in the film room, and I'm going to be so smart that I'm going to know what's going to happen before it's going to happen. And so you figure out what your superpower is during these early years of your career, and then the rest of the career you spend trying to exploit that, both physically and mentally.
Okay, and I figured with this being a new offense, new head coach, I kind of figured that the veterans would definitely be probably a little bit more in tune at OTAs than normal, because it seems like and it was leaked by Miles Sanders, the new free running back we picked up, that there's going to be an RPO heavy type of offense, because last year. Mike, I'll be honest with you, it was kind of hard for me to understand what our offensive philosophy, was. Obviously once we had Dante Foreman, we seemed to be more of a, power running team per se, with the multiple games over 150, 175. But, with learning, how it is with the RPO schemes, because I believe the term that Coach Wright said he said it's like 3 levels to the RPO game. So I just definitely think that, full participation would be something we us fans hope that all the players get, because we definitely don't want those wasted time of reps, both mentally and physically, to go to waste, because we feel like.
Just remember this though, Kevin. Like for 50 years, we didn't have any of this, and we were all and these schemes, all of this, like they keep. Scheme and wording and this and that, but like I just went. I've been through multiple playbooks the last couple of weeks. The conceptually, from a running back, offensive line standpoint, the route tree that you run or the concepts that you have, like 90% of the stuff you run is the same stuff everybody else is running. It's how you dress it up. It's how you dress it up. It's the formations you use, different personnel grouping. So there are changes. But it's like if you're running a weak side zone, your weak side zone and my weak side zone aren't going to be that different. You see what I mean? Especially if you have like the same offensive line coach. Now you might have to cause a receiver. Frank Wright might bring in his own language system. And if you have to learn a new language system, you're going to have to spend time learning that new language system. But again, like your footwork as a quarterback isn't going to change because you're running the RPO now. If you're a veteran, not if you're a young guy, but if you're a veteran, the way you release in your routes, if you're any good, isn't going to change because you got a new wide receivers coach. You see what I mean? You already have figured out what works and how to do things, and you're just going to try to mold that into what they're trying to accomplish, so you can execute what they're asking you to execute at the highest level. But you're not really. It's not like you bring in a new offense or defense, and it's like, well, I don't know anything anymore. I have to learn this new offense. And it literally is, it's not like coming from running the option offense at Navy to running like an NFL offense. You see what I mean?
Right.
Like I had to do that. And just trust me, it's not the same. That is a complete disaster.
All right. Well, real quickly, Kyle, I just wanted to ask you, and I never asked you previously here. Could you give an example, like maybe like what maybe like what the typical call is in the huddle? Like what part is it that applies to the lineman? Because we've heard and we've seen written on these chalkboards these great elaborate verbiage. Like what is the part that you guys listen to? And then I know once you get to the line, checks are made, from the center and things like that. Like what's the verbiage that you guys typically you tend to use for? I don't know if there's a certain one that you like that you want to call out and like tell us what your part was or whatever. But how do you explain the verbiage for O lineman on a play call?
Sure. So it depends. Everything's different now. So some people are still using numbers. Some people are using words. Warlock or wizard or something like that will mean like outside zone run. Or you could say like we had green right tight 96 power load, right? Or far right tight 96 power load. That would tell us, hey, 96 eye backs, 6-hole power, guard pulls, load. We got fullback coming the backside. We got two tight ends on the front side down blocking. Like it kind of tells you all those plays. What happens now is a lot more, and especially these zone schemes, these RPOs, the outside zone schemes. What you're saying, you'll hear something like zebra right close, foxtail with a tag, and the tag will be like it'll foxtail silt. And the silt will mean like tight ends inserting from the B gap and kicking out the end, right? As opposed to like coming down or trying to root them out. They're actually like, they'll do like an orbit or a return motion and come inside out. So what you hear now is you'll hear for that one word for the offensive line. Like, is it a right? Are you running to the right? You running to the left? Is it Larry or is it Romeo? Essentially, right? Left or right? And you figure out what that part of it is. And then all the tags at the back now are usually for like the insert tight end, the fullback, or the Z coming down, and they have those tags. So you'll kind of be scratching your head sometimes when you look at these new playbooks because there's all these tags at the back of it, and all they really are is this is where we want the Z, the tight end, the F tight end, the Y tight end to insert into the play, whether it's play side or backside. But like, are they coming from inside out, outside in? Are they coming head up? Are we working split flow, etc.?
Okay, cool. Because when they allow us to get some audibles, the plays been called, and I'd be like, wow, what part is for the line? So I'm definitely glad you explained that here too.
And when they do an audible, usually if you hear like a one word audible, like that just means oftentimes that they already do like a run check pass, or that just means you're going over, right? So if you hear like a one word, if they're like check, and they say black, or green, that just means you're going from run to pass to run, or that means they're keeping the play the same because they had a check with it, or they're flipping it to the other side. So usually when you hear one word stuff, it's not like, unless they're given a receiver, like Aaron Rodgers would like put the zipper on his pants or something like that, or like touches inside of his hand, like that means something very specific to a specific receiver. But otherwise, at the communication they're having with the offensive line, the running backs, everything is just like, man, we're doing the same thing. We're going over. We're going pass to run or run to pass.
All right, that definitely makes sense. All right. So we pretty much uncovered the Panthers part here, Mike. I'm gonna get ready to wrap this up here and let you go here. Told my baby she can ask you a question here. So here it is with her being a Packers fan. She wants to know. Actually, I'm gonna give you two here. You can answer. Number one, she says, "What do you think is the key to Jordan Love's success?" And then the other question that me and her had discussions about. How do you feel about who the Packers drafted in the first round? Do you feel like that was the right place to kind of reach? So Jordan Love and then the draft pick, if you want to touch up on that for us.
So Jordan Love's success is going to be predicated on. I really like that they drafted those two tight ends because I think that changes. I think that changes the way LaFleur is going to run his offense from what he was doing over the past couple of years to more like a San Francisco style where you have like a Kittle and a Juszczyk and guys that you can kind of move around and insert a Deebo Samuel. Jaron Reed, is one of those guys as well that the third round draft pick out of Michigan State that you can just kind of move around. So I really like that because I think Jordan Love, if they ask him to go run the Aaron Rodgers hybrid offense that they've been running, that's going to limit him. He's not Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't have that experience or that arm strength talent level, whatever you want to call it. So you need to put a more user-friendly system in. And in order to do that, you're probably going to have to start running more of that outside zone with a lot of the motion and everything that makes that Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan offense go and really just eat up the kind of the width of the field. He's got Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, now Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. He's got Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. I mean, we don't know how all those first four guys are going to turn out, particularly the two tight ends, but we can make some assumptions based on what we saw from Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs last year. Samori Torres is another person in that conversation. Those guys are going to be good, and they're all growing together with Jordan. Like, this is Jordan's first year, those two tight ends first year. The oldest guy on that group is Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones is like, I don't know, 27, 28 years old.
Right.
So I think they have a really good core. It's just going to take some time to gel. Their offensive line, I'm disappointed they didn't pick up a guy to compete at one of the guard or tackles at the right tackle spot, but it is how it is. That's how the draft fell. With your second question, Iowa guys are not sure things, but they're pretty close to sure things as far as is he going to be productive in his career, given where he's coming from, given the work ethic, the behaviors that they instill in that place with Kirk Ferentz at the head coaching position. They develop offensive and defensive linemen very, very, very well. I think it was at the 13th pick, I kind of bifurcate the first round after, like, at pick 15, maybe it's like for next year, next season. Dude, 15 and below, you got to produce this year. Lucas Van Ness is athletic. He is going to be a guy that can play because he's got decent play strength. He has good hands. He was not the best guy on the board for me at 13.
Mm-hmm.
I think Miles Murphy was still on the board. If you're going to go that route, but Broderick Jones was picked next, and he for me was a no-brainer because you could have fit him in at left guard, moved Elton Jenkins to right guard or right. There's things you can do there because that's a premium position, a premium player, premium talent. I think for me, he wasn't a 13th pick in the draft worthy player this year. He probably would have been next year. He's a redshirt sophomore. So you just talk about, like, could he get a little more experience at Iowa, a couple more plays, learning how to, you can jump set him every play and he'll just run into you right now. Like, for example, you know what I mean? Like, you just jump set him. He's just going to try to bull rush you at the line of scrimmage. He's 275 pounds. You're not doing that in the NFL. So there's just things where you go, he's got a lot to learn. But I think if you're trying to build out, you're trying to draft premium athletes, like Goody's trying to draft premium athletes, and then they're just saying our coaching staff has to develop them. And he certainly did that with Lucas Van Ness.
Mm-hmm. And my final question here, and we'll wrap it up here so you can continue with your day, Mike. It's kind of a head scratcher here for me. They were saying that I guess the GM was saying that wasn't sure about giving Jordan Love the 5th-year option, which I think is about $18 million, but gave him a 1 year. Okay, but gave him a 1 year extension. Mm-hmm. I think it was 13 guaranteed, but up to 22. How did you feel about that 1 year extension? Do you think that was a smart move, or do you think how do you feel about that?
Smart for who?
Well, was that smart for the team? Because I feel like Jordan Love missed out on some money.
Well, I mean, Jordan Love missed out on some money, but on the, this is kind of the world we live in now, isn't it? Like, Jordan, let's reframe the conversation.
Okay.
Jordan Love has played a total of, I don't know, 30 snaps or whatever, 100 snaps in the National Football League. He has one start against the Chiefs last year. He lost. Mm-hmm. They didn't score. They scored like 7, not very many points. He's stepping into play starting quarterback for arguably the most storied franchise in the NFL, at the greatest, at 1265 Lombardi Avenue for the Green Bay Packers. 30 years of Hall of Fame quarterback play precedes him. They're giving him $13 million that they don't have. He has not, as to this point, earned anything. And if I'm Jordan Love and I believe in myself, the Green Bay Packers have proven with Brett Favre, with Aaron Rodgers, that they will pay you to be the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers if you prove that you're the guy. So I think Jordan Love took a team-friendly deal because Jordan Love's saying, I'm going to bet on myself. Oh, by the way, I'm going to make $13.5 million, which I don't know is still one hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
And when he does well, if he does well, he will now vault to $35-40 million on the extension. I mean, whatever the going rate is next year for a top 10 to 20 quarterback. So I think sometimes we forget that Jordan Love gets to play QB1 for the Green Bay Packers with very, very little reason for at least anybody on the outside to say he has done enough to show us that we didn't need Aaron Rodgers anymore, right? So I think it's a pretty good deal for both sides, honestly.
All right. Yeah, like I said, me and my baby, we definitely had some talks about that. So we're definitely glad that you gave your insight on it. So appreciate that. And, definitely appreciate you, again, taking time out your schedule to give us some insight about the defense line aspect of the 3-4 and the offensive line, probabilities, due to injury and what we can do there. So thank you once again, Mike, for coming back and blessing us with your insight and your intelligence. So it's much appreciated. And as always, you're more than welcome to come back here. Maybe we can have some, get something in during training camp, preseason, and see how things shaping up here.
Sounds good to me. Good talking to you as always.
All right. So I want to thank everybody that joined us here today on the 4-Man Rush. Here, as always, want to thank all of our fans. I want to thank how you guys interact with us on social media, particularly on Twitter. It's always a fun place, but also Facebook and Instagram. Again, special thanks to y'all for tuning in and listening with me and Mike Wahle here. Process to Perform. Definitely, if you don't, Mike, let them know where they can find you at on Twitter again.
Yeah, Mike Wahle 68 on Twitter and TikTok. Process to Perform on Instagram. All
right, there it is. All right, so on behalf of everybody here at the 4-Man Rush, I'm your main man, Kevin Avery, a.k.a. 4MR_Country Kev. Everybody take care, be safe, keep pounding, and we'll see you guys next time.